You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Rand, and this is where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Today we've got two sailors sitting down, pretty much just having a conversation about whatever, but it's kind of interesting. The sailing world has a way of being very small, and you run into people that you have met along the way, sort of over and over again, and that's just what happened with my buddy Dan, who sailed in to South Carolina and just happened to stop at the same marina that I was in. And Dan's a great guy. We first met up in Knights Marine up in Rockland, Maine, and he had pulled his boat out of the water and literally is just hard charging. He would go down to Portland and he would work all week, and then he'd come up and then he would sand. He'd be covered in, bottom paint and all this sort of stuff. He was a legend. He was just killing it on the productivity front as far as getting his boat ready so that he could then make his way down the East Coast. And he's a solo sailor, and he's sort of in the beginning stages of that, doing little hops and little offshore jaunts, let's say, down the coast, and just really living that sort of vagabond experience. And I don't know, very cool guy, super fun to sit down and talk to him. He has also hiked the Appalachian Trail as well as the Pacific Crest Trail. And so we do get into some of the hiking. It's kind of a sailing hiking podcast conversation. So hopefully everybody enjoys it. Before we start, as I always say, if you want to support the podcast, you can join the Patreon group. The family is growing every day. Thank you all so much for the support. And you can follow the link in the description to sign up with that. Other than that, if you want to reach out to the show, just head over to sailingintooblivion.com, click on the podcast link, and contact the show. And yeah, basically that's about it. So we're going to dive right into the conversation with Dan.
I want to do a shirt line of Murph that we've got these great pictures of him, like really high resolution. He's sticking his head out of the shack, and then the other one he's blowing the horn, and there's like lobster pots because he's really photogenic. I mean, as a Maine lobsterman, and
he's a character.
I just want to put underneath it. I want to put the Oracle has spoken. And like Murph above it. He wants to put, when I'm not drinking alone, I drink with my friends. Like, all right. Gotcha, bud. Gotcha.
What have you gotten any of his like life story? I know he's been a fisherman his whole life, and then
he did.
How did he end up in the shack at Knights Marine?
I'd hate to try and tell that story and not get it right. But I know he was a scalloper for a long time. He was born in Maine.
Yeah.
And worked with our buddy Heath on his father, Rick, Captain Rick Curtis. He ran like 100-foot scallop boat for a long time, and their friendship, I think, bled into Night Marine, and Cy needed somebody he could count on that, moment's notice, I need your help, transporting this boat, moving this boat, doing whatever. And yeah, I think Murph just needed a place to be able to stay so that he could be available all the time, and match made in heaven.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And that first year that I was there, I was so busy prepping the boat, I almost never hung out with those guys. They were there. They used to, have beers right there by the office every day after work.
Yeah.
And the boat was right where it was this year, next to that boxcar. But I was just full on, like, go, go, go.
I mean, when you're in the middle of, like, it's so much work to, like, I spent the whole summer just getting ready to do this trip, not like take off for a
Yeah,
circumnavigation,
right.
right? I wasn't like, I've got plenty of food on board, but not like 300 days worth of food.
Yeah, oh yeah, it gets a little more intricate,
Yeah,
but really, it's just in a lot of ways. I think all you're doing is you're just scaling up. So when you were prepping, here, you want to move that mic just a bit closer?
Yeah.
There you go, sweet. When you were prepping, what sort of was your idea as far as like how far you were gonna go, and provisioning? What were you trying to have the boat geared up for?
basically this type of trip. So just like working down the U.S. East Coast and offshore, to use the term loosely, hops, meaning
Right.
like I'm saying offshore as in not the ICW.
Now the
So,
ICW, sometimes you can't see it.
Yeah, right. I don't think I've been more than 20 miles out, ballpark. Definitely not more than 30, probably over 20 a couple times.
Yeah.
So it's out there, but not like, deep sea, blue water.
Right,
sailing.
right. But still, yeah,
But
you're not coastal cruising, like you can't see the land the whole time.
no. Mostly because I just don't want to motor down the ICW when I want to sail.
Copy that.
And
I understand.
I've got a good job. I can work remotely, so I can sail on the weekends, but that also means that I don't have many, many consecutive days to sail. So I've got, 48 hours. If I take a day off on a Friday or Monday, I can get myself, 3 days.
Have you ever had a time where you were sort of like, all right, well, I'm going to do this 2-day hop, and then you get like becalmed or whatever, and then all of a sudden,
I haven't yet.
anybody heard
That's
from
like,
Dad?
yeah, right. That's was a fear I
Alive.
had initially, but the reality is like modern coastal weather forecasting is just so good.
In the short term.
Yeah, right. Because
Yeah.
I'm not looking, 10 days out, right? I'm looking
Yeah,
at
no need,
the the next 2 days of wind, and if it's not looking good, I don't have to leave this marina on Friday night if I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I can basically just go, and I've done almost all the sailing from Maine to here in Beaufort downwind. I've just basically been
Just
pulled
love
out
it.
wing on wing.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
oh look, it's blowing out of the northeast, and I wanted to go south. Perfect. Like, here we go, 150 degrees away.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. And I guess, yeah, I mean, shoot, man, because it's that adventure that you're on, doing the hops down the coast, is something that I get sort of like anxious about, because I think of, all the pilotage, all the navigation, all of the
Yeah,
hours of focus and
it's-
traffic.
So AIS is an absolute amazing piece of technology, and I wouldn't consider
agree.
doing it without it. One of the things I did this summer is I installed a transponder. So I transmit and receive.
Yeah.
Which is really valuable, when U.S. Warship 3 is like crescent, U.S. Warship 3. Like, yeah, the freaking Navy. It's like, hey, we're conducting flight exercises.
Oh,
Please maintain a 2 nautical mile CPA. And
it's not your water, it's God's water.
no, it was fine, but they saw me on radar.
Mhm.
So I'm sure they saw me when I was way out, but they were able to hail me by name as opposed to like
Yeah.
the blue
Vessel.
hulled sailing vessel southbound on the, Virginia coast.
Right.
It's
Well, I think when I was coming up, they were doing some sort of live fire exercise, and so they were yelling at all these ships to get out, above a certain latitude or below a certain latitude, and I was lucky. I was just above it and moving north. But yeah, the military, they don't mess around. They're like, clear your vessel out of here as fast as you can.
they were perfectly polite,
Oh yeah.
Basically, we were gonna. I think if I'd maintained my course, I would have gotten within like a mile and a half of them. So still pretty far out.
Right.
but closer than they wanted because they were conducting flight exercise. But I was downwind on, I can't remember now if it was a port or starboard tack, but basically I couldn't head any further off the wind without driving, so I had to
Yeah, right.
hail back and be like, hey, I'm a sailboat under sail. I need a few minutes to jibe, and then I'll
right.
give you as much room as you want.
Give me a hot second.
I think I must have been on a starboard tack, and I had to jibe to put myself on a port tack, so because I had wind out of the northeast, I was heading south, so that I could head a little bit further offshore.
Oh, okay.
Head away from land, because it doing what they wanted would have put me like straight dead downwind, like 180 degrees and one little gust, and all of a sudden you're messy jibe.
Right. Well, do you not have a preventer on there?
I do, but I'd rather put myself at like 160 or 170 degrees, and
it is always nice,
not be constant. I did actually. I'm very glad I installed preventer. So I put 2 huge blocks, port and starboard, up on the bow.
Yeah.
I run lines that go from there all the way back to the cockpit, and then I've got a line that runs the length of the boom with a shackle, so I can take the line on the boom and connect it to either one of the lines on the side of the boat. So the preventers are just always there.
Always there, yeah. So you have two preventer lines, and then you're hooking that.
Yeah, so when I jibe, I just switch from one to the other. I've also used one as like a downhaul on a whisker pole. So if I pull out my Genoa, I can use the preventer that's not on the boom to hold the whisker pole, pull the whisker pole forward, and use the sheet to pull the whisker pole aft.
Yeah, right.
And there's a topping lift on the pole holding it up.
Okay, gotcha.
Which I played with that, and it, at least from what I've read, you're supposed to do it, but honestly, in
a million different ways for all the million different boats there are.
So I played around with it, and it definitely does help keep the pole more stable. What I've been doing more recently is I've taken the lazy jib sheet and just passed it under one of my bow cleats and just put a little bit of tension on the lazy sheet.
Oh, okay.
Just to pull, provide a little bit of force pulling the end of the pole towards the bow, and then the sheet that your leeward sheet is still sheeting
Interesting.
the pole aft, and that helps. But also, like, you don't have to do it. It's fine if you just put the pole on clip it, put the jaw into the sheet, and just use that topping lift and the leeward sheet.
Right. As long as there's something, to sort of hold it. I'm very lucky on this boat that I've spent enough time doing it where I found that all I have to do, I have in my sheets a figure 8 knot about 4 inches from the actual clew of the sail. So the jaw just goes on that. It can't slide past the figure 8. And because I know exactly the sheeting angle I need, I run it in between my lowers and my uppers, and it just holds that staysail perfect. And it doesn't rub against anything, and it's just like, okay, that's perfect for either downwind, like dead downwind, or if I want to be at like 160, almost even higher, and then actually the wind is reverse on that sail. Like, it's actually, I've reversed how that sail is actually,
flowing on the other
working.
Side. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Once you get yourself, pulled out wing on wing, you can head up.
Maneuver. Like, it's crazy.
Pretty high. I mean, definitely below a beam reach, but 120 maybe. Like, you can.
It is. It's really quite cool.
Yeah.
All it takes is a lot of time and fiddling and, not being lazy. And I'm so guilty of that, where I'm like, it's fine, I'm gonna just let it do that. It's not perfect, but it's working. And it's when you're, when I was in sort of more your shoes, where it's sort of the start of the whole solo sailing thing, where you're into it all. You're just trying. Like, I used to go and take like a marker when I figured out something that was like perfect. I'd go and mark it on the sheets and be like, okay, so I know that I can set the staysail and pull it out, and the sheet's going to be marked, and I just have to pull it in right there. And then I can just hoist the halyard, and it's perfect. And those, sometimes that
Oh,
worked.
that's
Sometimes it
neat
didn't.
because you've got Hank on sail, so you can set the pole before the sail is even hoisted.
Oh
I
yeah,
hadn't
yeah,
thought
yeah.
about that.
Well,
'Cause
and the
I've just
cool part too is that if all of a sudden like a squall rolls in or whatever, I can douse the whole thing. Just I let the halyard just go, and the pole ends up hitting the lifeline, but it just stays right there. The
Right.
whole sail just falls and is hanging there, and then I can just run up there real quick, unclip the jaw, and then lash it all down if I want. Sometimes I just leave it up there. I'm like, man, squall's gonna pass.
I mean, it works similarly with roller furling. You can just, let the sheet go and furl the sail up, and it just pulls the pole
right, pulls
right
it
up
forward.
against the furled
But
sail.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
true. Because it's just sliding right through it.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And it also lets you adjust the size, the amount of sail you have pulled out.
mm-hmm.
So if I have, 1 reef, 2 reefs, 3 reefs in the main, I can adjust the amount of sail area out on the head sail to balance the boat to make the wind vane have an easier time.
Do you have to adjust, or can you adjust the length of your whisker pole?
I can.
You can. Do
Yeah.
you though, or do you kind of have to keep the angle of that sail just right?
I'm still figuring out how to adjust it. I think with a little bit more experience, I'll probably be able to dial in, like, these are the points that I should pull it out
like
to.
pull it into that piece of tape.
Basically, if I've got 2 reefs in the main or a third, I pretty much just extend the pole to make it to the head stay.
Yeah.
If I've got 1 reef, or like maybe it's gonna get windy enough that I need 2 reefs, but definitely not to a third, I pull it 18 inches beyond.
Right.
It's
So
like
you got
I'm
it
still
good.
figuring out
Yeah.
exactly, dialing in exactly what the right amount is. And a couple times what ends up happening is whatever length I set the pole to sets or fixes how much sail I can unfurl. So
Right.
it kind of, so the longer the pole is, the more sail you have to
You can
unfurl.
have- yeah, right.
So there are a couple times where I've basically gotten it wrong and set the pole length too long and then unfurled too much sail.
And then you're like,
But you can't.
Whoa! This
the-
Pearson is moving.
Yeah. Or like the problem is you can't adjust the sail, the length. You can't adjust the length of the pole under load. So you have to just furl the sail, go up,
Yeah,
adjust the pole,
start it again,
and then you can keep the jaws on the sheet, so you're not totally starting again.
Right. Well, on that, yeah, because that is typically, if you're using a topping lift and a downhaul and stuff like that for
Yeah.
that pole, it is a pain in the
And
butt.
I don't know, where do you store your pole? Is it on the deck, on the mast?
Yeah, it's right up here.
Okay.
I just have two lash points, a third one if it's gonna get ugly, but I can untie it and have it on the sail and on the mast probably in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I just have 2 points on the deck on the port side up on the bow.
Yeah.
And that works fine. That's the way the boat came. I could see how it could be nice to have a long enough track on the mast, or you could store the pole like always
vertically?
ready to go. Yeah, and just store
Yeah.
it up on the forward edge of the mast.
I've seen a lot of boats will have
Yeah. I looked. The track I have isn't long enough
that. Oh, to hoist it all the way
to
up.
hoist
Yeah,
it high
yeah.
enough, even with the pole at its shortest length, for that to work. And then it's just another, okay, do I find a short piece of track to extend what I already have? Do I replace the whole track? Is it even worth it when I can just put it on the
No,
deck?
It's not. It's
no,
definitely
no.
not. Yeah, I mean,
But
and they don't take up a huge amount of surface area.
No.
It's fine.
It's fine, and yeah, it's less weight aloft or less windage or whatever.
Yeah, right,
It's
exactly.
easy and working, and there are other things I can
So-
spend my time and money on.
Yeah, exactly. A nice bottle of
Right. Well, that
ship's cap run.
that
Or
was
no, this was a gift,
so
right?
somebody else spent their money on it. Yeah.
Dan brought a lovely bottle of ship's cat, as in CAT, aged rum. Very spicy. Or not spicy, but when I took that first sip, it was like a punch in the face.
A little rough.
A little rough. But hey, you know, that's what rum is supposed to be, especially if you're drinking it neat and not on any ice or anything.
Right, just straight.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of challenges have you run into, difficulties as far as because is this primarily your first sort of big solo adventure?
Yeah, so I mean, I started sailing when I was 8 on little dinghies on lakes in Maine.
Okay. So you got a background in it.
Yeah, but they're all tiny dinghies, right? There's no cabin. You're just going out for an hour or two to race a little bit or
but
sail around.
playing with the wind.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that, yeah.
And lake sailing's hard. The wind shifts a lot. You know, you can have the wind go 180 twice in a 1 hour sail.
Oh, 100%.
So like it's a different kind of sailing, but you can learn a lot doing it for sure.
100%.
Yeah, and then I just jumped into bigger boats by buying this one that I have.
So
now.
this is your first Crescent, right?
Yeah, Crescent.
And it's a Pearson 36?
A Pearson 10 meter. It's 33 feet.
Yeah, 10 meter.
Which
you were telling you went on a tirade the other night.
No, it's not so
it was great. You're like, there is a difference.
So it only matters a little bit if you're looking at Pearsons in the 70s.
Let it out, Dan. Just
no, I'm not frustrated about it. It's just an interesting little quirk to know about Pearson. So I have a Pearson 10 meter from 1976.
Mhm.
I forget when the first year was they started building the boats, but say mid 70s. But from the mid 70s into 80s, Pearson made 2 different 33-foot sailboats. They made a Pearson 33 and a Pearson 10 meter, and they're different boats. The 33 is a
Which
little
one's
bit
better?
I've never been on the Pearson 33, so I don't know.
I thought that was a given. You were gonna.
No.
Mine is better.
From looking at the drawings and the specs, it looks like if I remember correctly, the Pearson 33 is a little bit more race and performance oriented. Fin keel, fin rudder, or spade rudder. Whereas my boat has a fin keel, but it's a wider one, and I have a skeg hung rudder.
Oh, definitely. That's more of a burly boat for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know the displacement difference offhand. I know my boat displaces like just over 12,000 pounds.
Well, it's a great looking boat. I mean, I guess I'm sure my listeners already realize that you and I have known each other for a while now. Because I didn't even do an intro, and I will, when I set this thing up to launch. But, what, Dan? You and I met not this last summer, but the summer before.
Yeah, summer of 21.
You were hauled out at Night Marine, and you came up there. And did you paint the hull and the bottom?
The whole damn
You
boat.
did the whole thing because you were covered in blue. Like crazy. And I remember Murph calling you Dan the T-shirt man. You got to know some of the guys at night. You were around because you were jetting off to Portland, and then you'd come up and be like up there for like 3 days, and you just work your ass off.
Yeah, I was just like I am now, working full time, and then working on the boat during the weekend. And sometimes I'd have a holiday or a vacation day to get up to a 3-day weekend. So I drive up to Rockland and
Yard life.
Man, the painting's not so bad. The sanding is not great. I think
rough.
there was a lot. There were many layers of bottom paint that had accumulated from previous owners on the bottom of that boat. And if I had to do it again and I had the money, I would just pay someone to sandblast and take it right back down to gel coat and start again, because it was so much time.
Well, and it's
hard work to do the
for you
sanding.
too.
Yeah, right. Wearing a mask with a vacuum sander, and yet my nostrils are still filled with
caked with
all the gross anti-fouling
dust.
Yeah.
What do you think your lungs would look like? Oh god.
It was definitely not the healthiest thing to be doing, and I didn't do as good a job as could be done with sandblasting, right? Because I basically got so frustrated it was taking so long, and I was running through so many sanding pads. It's like, well, it's fair-ish. So we're
Yeah.
gonna call it good enough.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look like a relief
The
map
paint's not right. It's not like a topographic map. The paint's not falling off
of the Grand
hull.
Canyon.
Yeah.
Eh.
But
you know.
the hull, the bottom looked okay when I hauled out this summer in Portland just for a week to just light sand and put on another 2 coats of bottom paint.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the top sides were just
That's a lot
kind
more
of a
finesse. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know. I've been going for more of a workboat vibe. I don't want to get caught up in like, doing everything to a yachtsman grade finish or whatever, because I just want to go sailing. The top sides
Yep.
were not in great shape from the folks I bought the boat from. Paint was peeling, and whoever had painted over the gel coat initially had not done it. Like, they hadn't even pulled the stickers and decals off the gel coat before painting. They just painted right over it. And it was
probably
looking
not a lot of prep work. Sanding
no, and it was just
yeah.
looking pretty rough. And I was at the dock the whole winter before, and got a little bit of damage where just to the paint, not to the fiberglass or the hull, where a fender had popped and the boat was resting against the dock for a few hours before I realized what was going on.
Yeah, you told me about that.
So yeah, did a little bit of sanding and then repainted the top sides as well that summer. That was like much faster. I just rolled and tipped it myself with cheap Interlux paint.
Yeah.
It's not fancy all.
Well, again, it's
one.
one of I totally agree with you. I mean, the deck on this boat, all I have to do is go down and get a quart for $44 or whatever of yellow,
right?
if I can find it, and then tape it off, and it looks like I have a brand new deck on my boat, and I love that. Yeah, sure, it would be nice to have it professionally gel coated and all that sort of stuff, but guess what? In a year or two, I'm gonna have dropped the spinnaker pole on it.
Yeah,
and
you're
drag Hank-ons in it, in a storm, and been
haul
like,
up your muddy as hell anchor chain, and like,
it's working boats. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's really nice when you can walk down to your boat and it looks gorgeous. And you're like, oh, there's not a blemish on it.
And there's, I think, some practical value in having your boat look maybe not,
showroom finish.
It doesn't need to be shiny, but it can be helpful to have the boat look at least presentable if you're going to be anchored or show up in a marina. Like, you don't want to look like the floating derelict.
Right. You don't want rust streaks coming down, telltale signs that there's like serious things going on with your boat. As far as issues and corrosion.
Whatever you can do to just sort of blend in and not like, you don't need the Coast Guard taking more of an interest in you for being like a navigational hazard or so they're
yeah, right. Oh god.
There's like some value in just wanting to look
keeping a boat ship shape.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's the thing. But I think your description though of a working boat, because I've always told, especially in the boat yard, people come on the boat and the first thing I say is, you don't have to take your shoes off. This is a working boat. This isn't like that. And I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, the cabin sole, the wood needs to be tuned up for sure, because I jumped down here all summer long in the marina with the amount of mopping up I have to do in that boatyard of this boat. It's like literally
it's the worst
day.
Because when you're in the boatyard, it's basically just
dust,
mud,
dirt,
and so your shoes
mud.
are going right through all the mud before you climb the ladder to get into your boat. Whereas at least if you're going out to anchor or walking down a dock, it's usually there's some runway for the dirt to fall off your shoes first.
I can remember trying to in my early days when I was doing yacht deliveries, trying to come up with a collapsible piece of like a welcome mat, but it was going to be of that AstroTurf sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
That you could somehow have like a small bit of water in it so that when people came up, they could almost scrub the bottom of their feet or their shoes. Because I can remember working as like the first mate on a couple of boats for like Caribbean season. There was one time I spent literally like 8 hours hand waxing the hull, cleaned up the whole deck, like just the boat looked perfect. And the owner came back and he had muddy shoes and he just walked straight onto the boat, straight through the cockpit, right over the white deck, just footprint, footprint, footprint. It was all still a little bit damp. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is the last time I'm doing this job. This isn't working for me. But hey, that was my job. I got paid to take care of that, and so I just, grabbed my chamois, followed it up. But I don't know.
Just want to go sailing. I don't want to
Go sailing, man.
I don't want to worry about the boat looking nice. And also, you're gonna scuff the boat coming in single-handed to a dock, like you're.
Now speak for yourself, buddy. I don't know what kind of program
right.
You're running over there.
You're perfect. That's right. I'm sure every time you come alongside in any conditions by yourself when there's no one to give you a hand with the lines, I'm sure it works out perfectly every time.
Now I've only had one incident in all the years actually. On this boat at least, where I misjudged the current and I should not have done what I did, but luckily Sparrow was the only one that took a little bit of a hit, which is always pretty much the goal.
Yeah,
100%.
Scuff your boat, not someone else's.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, hey, before we continue on with any of the sailing stuff, you've done some serious hiking. That's awesome, man. It's so cool that I find it's a rarity to find. I think there's always a lot to be said about the similarity between spending time in the woods and spending time at sea. They both have different aspects, but there's sort of that similar feel of being in the arms of Mother Nature, if you will. But it's very rare to find sailors that have also done like the big long distance hiking trips. And I did the AT in 2012. What year did you do that one?
I hiked the AT in 2017. And then I had so much fun doing it that I worked for the winter and then took off for the PCT.
PCT straight away.
That's the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. To
the lake.
Not abuse acronyms for folks
Most
who might
of
not be
my
familiar.
listeners, they know. I did a whole series, which actually I think I still need to finish. Apologies to my listeners on that one. I think I was breaking down each state, doing a podcast about each state. I think I made it to the Massachusetts or Vermont.
Oh, you're almost there. Then there are only a few more.
Yeah. But wow, holy cow! So, just stats wise, not that it really matters. How long did it take you to do the AT?
The AT was a little over 4 months. I left Springer Mountain in Georgia March 28th.
Ooh, late start. I like that.
March 28th is late? Interesting.
I left March 3rd.
Okay, yeah, I guess I did run into a bunch of people who were on the trail in early March and February and got snowed on all the time. And
it's crazy. When I went through the Smokies, we had a heat wave. So in 2012, that was the year that the continental U.S. lost all of its snow in March. We were in the Smokies like the second week or so in March, and it was 75 degrees. Wow. No bugs, no snow, a lot of rain for sure.
Yeah, that's the AT for you. A lot of rain.
Lot of rain. A lot of hiking wet. Not wearing a raincoat because there is no point. Oh, geez. Okay, so you did 2017. You left mid to late March.
Yeah, March 28th, and then I summited Katahdin on July 30th.
Okay. Yeah, that put you and me just about at the same pace.
Yeah.
I did the 3rd, and then I summited on the 13th.
Yeah. like 2 weeks shifted or so.
Touche,
Yeah.
my good man. And we both have beards right
We
now.
both have beards.
Yours
yeah.
is more burly than mine. Yours looks.
I need a haircut.
You're-
But I look more like a thru hiker now.
You definitely do. You look like somebody I'd bump into in Massachusetts. I think you're just about at Massachusetts level. Which one did you like better, AT or the PCT? I know it's almost impossible. To
Yeah,
say,
so
but
I'm
I'm
a Yankee boy. I'm from Connecticut. I've spent all of my adult life and a significant portion of my childhood in Maine. I had been dreaming about hiking the AT since I was 9,
oh wow, okay,
but the PCT is a better trail.
really
Yeah.
right on. Wow.
I mean, the hiking out west is it's just amazing. The AT is ballpark 2,200 miles long.
yeah,
The PCT is 400 miles longer. It's 2,650. The AT has more elevation gain and loss.
oh yeah, big time.
And the high point on the AT is Klingman's Dome at like
6,610 feet or something,
right.
if memory serves.
The
Let me grab my Appalachian Trail hiker guy. No, it's right there though. It actually is. Not that you have to. Look
whereas
that up.
the high point on the PCT is Forester Pass at like 13 something.
Yeah, huge.
I took Mount Whitney is not actually on the PCT, but many thru hikers take like a day to hike off the PCT to summit Mount Whitney. The
Oh,
tallest
really?
point in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Continental 48. So that's at like 14.2 or something like that.
Oh,
so
okay.
The PCT is significantly longer, much higher, but the hiking is way more mellow.
Yeah.
It's most or all of the trail is intended to be equestrian grade, so for like pack animals.
Yeah.
So it's rarely more than 5% grade.
I did not
Well,
know that.
20% grade is roughly gaining or losing 1,000 feet in a mile.
Yeah.
That happens all the time on the AT.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I remember the
Yeah.
roller coasters up in. I can't remember where the roller coaster is.
I think that's Northern Virginia.
I think so. 13 or something up and downs. Well,
Yeah.
they have a term for them now. They call them useless up and downs. Like
PUDs, right? Pointless
Something.
ups and downs.
yeah, that's it. I love the nomenclature that goes on in the trail world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the hiking is just much more mellow. I mean, it's still hard, but there's a lot more diversity. I mean, the southern PCT is really the desert, and then you go through the High Sierra, which is kind of like the White Mountains, but for 300 miles.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, lots of time way above tree line, just exposed granite. And then there's a large part of Oregon that's very volcanic.
Ooh.
And then you get up
Crater
into,
Lake and stuff.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you get up into the Cascades in Washington, and that's actually pretty similar to like the White Mountains in New Hampshire and Katahdin in Maine.
Okay.
Similar vibe. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
So there's a lot more variability.
Well, like, can I ask you this? So, doing the AT first and then, going and doing the PCT must have made the PCT much easier because you're
Yeah.
sort of already trail savvy.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
understand about carrying lightweight.
Well, and I'd only been off the trail. Like I finished the AT the end of July in 2017,
Uh-huh.
and I left. I started the PCT on May 4th of the following year.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
yeah.
Sure, by the time I started the trail, I wasn't quite at the same level of fitness that I finished the trail, but I had a lot of strength still
Little
built
muscle
up
memory, yeah.
from spending all that time through hiking on the AT. And you just I felt much more relaxed about the PCT. I did so much planning for the AT, was reading way ahead in all the guidebooks.
Yeah.
And
I was
basically-
so excited. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing it.
It's super exciting. It's cool, learn about all the places you're going to go, but I just got so lost in all the logistics and then was able to, for the PCT, just chill out a little bit and basically just, all backpacking is throwing a whole bunch of stuff in a bag and walking.
Yeah.
And if you can just do that, it's
Well, that's
much
a
easier to be
simple
just like-
description of it, but
But-
yeah,
right.
true.
But I felt like, it takes, a few thousand miles to just feel comfortable enough to Yeah, it's gonna be fine. I know there's town in like 100 miles. I know I can do
That's
the
the
100
thing.
miles in
Yeah.
5 days or whatever it is. Throw my food in the bag, and I'll just walk.
Well, and so that perfectly describes the AT. Do you have that ability on the PCT to be able to just is there that many stops? Because I know it's changing, like because it's become more
Yeah.
popular.
It depends on what a stop means and what getting to town means.
Yeah,
In Southern California, so from Campo, which is the basically border town in California that's right on the Mexican border, all the way up to Kennedy Meadows, which is basically the stop everybody makes just before entering the High Sierra. I'd say the frequency of towns is pretty comparable to the AT. In fact, there might be more towns on the PCT where the trail goes effectively right through town. So you don't have to deal with like a hitch into town
oh, really?
or whatever.
Okay. Interesting.
Then like the High Sierra is much more challenging, right? It's about 280 miles of pretty hard hiking, right? It's the highest part of the trail, and the trail through the High Sierra is all just you go down to a valley and then up to a pass, right? That's something that's very different from the AT. Like everything is so high there. You don't hike to the summit of things. You hike to a pass in the next ridge.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of like many, many miles down and then many, many miles up. And it's about 280 miles where you don't see a power line, the trail doesn't cross a road, there's not a car. Like there is no 280 mile stretch of the AT
Not even
where
close.
you don't cross a road or see a power line, which is amazing. It was
What
crazy.
do you do for resupplying that?
So there are a couple options where you can have some pretty long hitches or do a whole bunch of off-trail hiking to get out of town. I actually went straight through, which was hard. It's the longest backpacking section I had ever done, and still so
that pack.
yeah, I did a 10-day section from Kennedy Meadows to Mammoth Lakes. I had planned on and packed food for 11 days and finished all of it in 9.5 days or whatever.
I'll bet.
It was.
There's no way to tame the hungry.
No, I took my shirt off to shower in the hostel in Mammoth Lakes and was like a little surprised at how visible my ribs were. It was not.
Yeah.
I have very rarely played it so close with food, but I had, I think, like half a Snickers bar and maybe like 5 tablespoons of olive oil left in my pack when I got into I was right down to the end.
Yeah. Jeez.
But I wanted the challenge of, just doing that huge long stretch right through the wilderness where there's nothing.
100%.
I wanted to see if I could do it. And, and I knew where all the bailout points were along the way. I don't want to speak definitively to all of them because I didn't actually take any of them, so I'm not terrible. I know Vermilion Valley Resort is one. Julian might be a town that some people hitch to. Like I said, I just hiked the PCT straight through.
There were okay. Well, knowing there's a few exit routes in there.
Yeah, which you could take if you needed.
Right.
I was under a little bit of time crunch on the PCT because I was taking classes and so had to be like finished with the trail to be able to go back to school in August.
Oh wow.
So I was doing everything I could to like limit the amount of time I was, to abuse the term, wasting by traveling off trail.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because I mean, like you could spend a whole day waiting for a hitch, or you can get really lucky and like the first car that comes by picks you up.
Or you could just forego it and
just hike straight through and not have to,
But I had a lot of fun. Yeah. Part of my AT hike was I had set aside enough money to be able to not only stay in pretty much every town I got to, but like get a hotel room and not like, oh man, am I going to be able to? It was more like, where's the nearest pizza? Where's the nearest beers? Let's do this.
Yeah, it's way better, especially if you're serious about it. You've got to be able to get to town and not and just be able to
Not
eat.
stress. Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It just makes it, I think, that much more enjoyable. Although I will say I did run into quite a few people that were doing it on like an extreme budget, and some of the situations they got themselves into, because they were in that situation, ended up sounding so epic. Like that's when, random strangers are finding you trying to like sleep on the sidewalk and then
right. Yeah,
invite you
yeah.
into their home and then, lend you their Lamborghini for the weekend. And you're like, what?
What is happening?
You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, it went so fast. You're like, what? That might be an embellishment, but like, you know what I mean?
No, there are certainly wild stories of. I mean, through hiking is not unlike cruising in that you run into really amazing people,
yeah.
and there are just lots of. I feel like there's sort of a constant, I don't know, current of like just acts of kindness for complete strangers. They're people who help each other out for no other reason than just they are coming across another person who could use some help and they're choosing to help them.
Well, and I totally agree with that, but I also think that there is this sort of adventure spirit when you run into a person who's taking upon themselves this epic challenge, like trying to through hike or do a long passage or something. I mean, long passage you don't run into a lot of people,
But
but
before and after you
with
do.
with like the AT hike and stuff, I mean, it's you'd start to talk to somebody and they're like, you're hiking from where to what? And there's sort of this kind of, you almost feel like I'm this adventurer and yes, and I don't
Yeah.
know. Excuse me. I think there's something to be said for that. And I think that's part of the reason why some people continue to do it.
Yeah, I
And
forget who it was. I think a woman from Australia I was hiking with. Her trail name was Zebra 'cause she wore these knee braces, but they were open around the knee, so she had these like really funky tan lines that were like stripes on her legs.
oh,
So
right.
Zebra for that reason. But she said something that I thought was pretty astute, which is that through hiking ruins your life in the best possible way.
I like that.
Because I think there are largely two groups of people. There are people, and I think I was saying this to you before, like there are people who do the through hike, and that's sort of it. Like that's the adventure. They are satisfied, scratch the itch, and they're on to whatever is next in store for them in life. And then there are other people, probably like us, who are like, wow, this is awesome.
It's a whole
What else
different-
is there?
Yeah, a whole
right?
different way to live. You mean we can do this?
Right.
Like
So
more?
what's next? Yeah. And for me that was the PCT, and now doing this sailing. And yeah, you just sort of like get a taste of what you could be doing or what life is like when you're not just working a 9 to 5.
It's a different
And it's
feel. It's a different
Pretty sweet.
it's a different path, that's
yeah.
for sure. And that, I think like there's highs and there's lows.
Yeah. Oh, it's not all just
there's drawbacks.
sunshine and rainbows. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest drawbacks to doing sort of, I guess you could definitely call these risky sort of adventures, because you could break a leg, fall off a cliff, get eaten by a bear or a mountain lion. There are actual risks out there.
Yeah.
I've always rationalized that with the fact
Your
that
boat can
I'm
get
not,
knocked down on the Gulf Stream north of Bermuda.
well,
right?
yeah, you could have something go wrong with you in the Southern Ocean. But you know what? Statistically, my parents, they worry about me all the time when I'm doing these things, and I try to relay to them that by driving in their vehicles,
Yeah.
they are far more vulnerable to death than I am. But they don't really see it that way.
I agree. I agree completely,
Yeah.
and I use driving driving as my go-to example for.
Oh, it's
I think
the
basically
most dangerous thing in the world.
It's so dangerous.
And because people are so nonchalant about
it's
it.
totally normalized, and I think basically we as humans are just not good at judging and rationalizing and thinking about risk.
Yeah.
Like things we feel comfortable with feel less risky, even if that's not the case. Like driving is a fantastic example. Like it's so dangerous
So
to
dangerous. Screaming
But-
past other vehicles. Literally 2 feet away, there's a dotted line
drive. Yeah.
to separate you, but half the people have a phone in their hand and they're texting somebody and looking up every once in a while. Oh my goodness.
And like
It's terrifying.
I mean, we've all grown up in cars driving. I don't feel I'm so nonchalant about it. I feel perfectly calm when I get in a car and go drive somewhere. It's no big deal, but that's not the way I should be thinking about that risk. But
yeah.
I feel much more anxious when I realize, wow, I'm out at sea and I can't see any land. You know, similarly, like I think many sailors feel more comfortable when their boat's at a dock, even though a dock is a terrible place for your boat, right? That's where all the other boats are. It's a confined space.
It's where the damage happens.
Yeah, it's where the damage happens. There are tons of boats that sink at the dock because of, you know, whatever happens, like the
Fires. All sorts of it's
whereas
true.
if you're out on a well-found mooring or on appropriate sized anchor, like your boat's gonna orient into the weather and it's gonna ride things out just fine.
Yep. That's true. That is very
Um,
true.
But we feel, you know, it's more comfortable to be able to just, you know,
Hop
get
on,
back to
hop off,
land. Or
yeah,
it's
yeah.
certainly more convenient to be at a dock, but I don't know that it's safer to be at a dock.
I think in a lot of ways it's going to depend on, you know, where the dock is and all that sort of stuff. Because even here, while we were gone, I was in Florida and you were off on your adventures. It blew like 35 from the west, so right down the creek. And I know they
Yeah.
adjusted my lines. Pax and Brian were there to sort of, because Mongo was getting pretty close to the dock. But there were people dragging anchors and all this sort of stuff. And I think, you know, there is
Yeah.
like, if you're not living on the boat and constantly on it, you still have to kind of check the weather and be like, hey, it's going to be a little 45 tomorrow in my area. I better go check the lines.
Yeah,
And a lot of people
for
don't.
sure. Yeah.
Just mystery to me.
Yeah.
I've always, you know, obviously if you're not here, like when I go to Michigan, I'll still check the weather in Beaufort. And if there's a big system coming out, even though I know, you know, Pax and all these people are here and stuff, but yeah, I don't know. But to our earlier point though, I think I've spent so little time driving over the last couple of years that, and it may just be because I'm still kind of fresh off the ocean. Hands are at 10 and 2. I'm like wide-eyed. I don't listen to the radio. I'm just like,
Yeah.
and I'm constantly looking in my mirrors when I have to like stop to take a left-hand turn or anything like that, just thinking, oh man, is this person paying attention?
Yeah.
Are they going to slam into me? I don't know. The whole driving thing is just, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I hate to go
was-
off on a tirade on it, but
No, but
it
also like,
really
you know,
is.
it's probably more dangerous walking around some major city than it is.
Yeah,
through
you
hiking.
know, well, and that's the thing. Like you said, man, we're very bad about sort of assigning risk and assessing it. And you know, it's a lot of people won't go out into the woods because they're like, well, but there's bears out there, and it's sort of like, okay, well, it's a 1 in a million chance that you're even going to see a bear, let alone be mauled by a bear. But there's something in our brains that says, bear, it could be you.
Yeah.
You know? So
I mean, and
I don't
like
know.
they're I get it, you know, bears are something to
understand.
think about,
Yeah.
but especially black bears on the East Coast, you yell at them and they run away. It's no big
I-
deal. They're like big raccoons almost.
I only ever saw the hind ends of bears that
Right,
were
they're just-
running as fast as they could. Now, did you see any grizzlies or brown bears out west?
I saw, yeah. Well, I guess honestly, I'm not sure if because they have both brown bears and black bears out west. There are no, at least to my knowledge, on the PCT there are no grizzlies. They do have grizzlies.
Up in
On-
Oregon, don't they?
I don't believe so. On the CDT, where the Continental Divide
Yeah.
Trail, that's the like big daddy of all these long
that's the
trails.
PCT.
That one runs also from Mexico to Canada, but across the Rockies.
Yeah.
Um, and I think up in Wyoming, Idaho, the northern section of the trail is definitely grizzly country.
Yeah.
But anyway, the black bears can have a much more brown color, apparently, or so I was told out west. And so I saw bears twice, I think, on the PCT. Once
That's it.
they were just like tearing down a mountainside. And then another time was the trail sort of winding through this area that must have been clear cut 10 years ago, and in the intervening time had just sort of been filled with berry bushes.
Mm-hmm.
But the berry bushes were like, I don't know, 6-8 feet tall, and the trail
Yeah.
was winding through it, so you can't really see. And then I sort of come around a bend in this thicket of berry bushes, and I just see the butt of this bear running away.
Oh wow. Okay. Any mountain lions?
They were probably there. I didn't see
you
them.
didn't
Yeah,
see 'em, yeah. They were full already,
yeah.
probably. Those things
They're
just
scary,
stalk
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
And but in those circumstances, I equate that to, worrying about running into a half submerged container in the middle of the night. Yeah, they're out there, but you're never gonna see them.
Yeah,
Especially at night.
right.
Obviously at night, but
even if you have radar, if it's submerged, you're not going to see it.
You're not gonna see it. So it's best just to be like, oh, that thought came into my head. Bing, get it out.
Yeah, and I guess,
Focus on
and
something
there are
else.
ways to prepare for it. You could build a watertight bulkhead in the bow. So that
Yeah.
if you did crash into something, right? And many boats do that. That's part of that's a basic safety feature for, I don't know, Coast Guard certification. And I don't have it. The bulkhead for my anchor locker is certainly not watertight.
Yeah,
but
I don't
it
even
wouldn't
have
be
one.
a crazy idea to glass it in, right? It's like a pretty easy thing you can do to mitigate the risk of running into a submerged container, right? In the unlikely event you do, even if you do manage to crack the hull, well, okay, the boat's set up for it, right?
That's what you have a life raft for, and all that sort of stuff. It's not like you can have a life raft for a mountain lion.
No, but you can learn, hey, with a mountain lion, what you really shouldn't do is run, and you shouldn't make eye contact with them. So you can learn how best to behave in a way that will be interpreted as non-threatening by this animal.
Right.
Just like, if you run into black bears, you should make a lot of noise and maybe throw some rocks and make yourself look big.
Yeah.
So
I think a mountain lion,
can...
though, for some reason, I just kind of feel like I don't know if there's any way to deter those things. They are just. I think
you just have to hope not to run into them.
Yeah,
it's really the best option. Yeah.
When like a house cat goes a little mental, it's like, get me out of here. It's got claws and teeth. A mountain lion, what do they weigh? 400 pounds? 300 pounds? They get really big, don't they? Oh god, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to speculate.
Cougars are scary. For sure.
Really scary, but not enough to keep you off the trail.
No,
definitely not.
No, and for the most part, they aren't interested in people. Like almost all wildlife,
scavenge something that's already dead.
Yeah. So I don't know. There are ways to, it's like you can keep yourself clipped onto the boat, or you can figure out how to
take all sails down when the wind gets over 22 knots.
Yeah, you can.
No,
sounds really boring every time you get over.
If you don't do that, you're gonna die of starvation out there. Trust me. Oh man. Well, I don't know. I just think it's really cool. You've done both of those. You think you'll ever do the Triple Crown? Try and get the CDT in there?
Yeah, I think I would like to at some point. I don't feel like a burning itch to go hike the CDT. Right now I feel much more interested in sort of this sailing adventure. I've spent, between the AT and the PCT, right? It's very nearly 5,000 miles of hiking,
Yeah.
which is a lot of hiking.
It's a lot, dude. That is a lot.
And so I'm enjoying a different kind of adventure.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go just hike the CDT just to finish the Triple Crown. It's, like 3,000 miles is a lot of hiking to do just to be able to say that I've hiked all 3 trails. Whatever.
Yeah, who really cares about that? Yeah.
So yeah, maybe, but
Well, it's
I
interesting.
don't have any immediate plans for it.
You described that burning desire, because that was something like when I wanted to hike the AT, which was sort of my first big like adventure of my, I guess, adult life or whatever. It was a burning like I need to do this. Like this is what I'm gonna do, and I knew I was gonna do it for at least like 2 years, maybe 3. And then the round the world trip, it was the same. It was like it is like I
I'm
have
doing
to do
this.
this. Like
Laser
this is
focused on it.
Yeah.
Well,
When I wake up in the morning, what I do that day has something very much to do with me getting to that point. But then after that, I definitely came to a place for a while where I couldn't find that anywhere. Like it was like, what else am I was looking for it
right,
drastically.
you hiked the AT and sailed around the world. Like what? What's the next
It
challenge?
was sort of
yeah,
like, well,
yeah.
but and I've always said that adventures come in all sizes. They don't have to be super dangerous. They don't have to be super long. They can just be all these different things. But there's something so awesome when you have that desire to do it, and it's just eating you alive that you've got to go, and that passion is just burning inside you. And I mean, I've definitely touched it a few more times, I guess, in the last couple of years. But I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if it's, as you get older, whatever, what happens, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't felt like a real burning desire to do anything like I had for those 2 events since.
Yeah, I remember it was pretty early on the AT. Someone had, I forget exactly what they said, if it was, asking me, like, oh, what are you going to do if you don't make it to Katahdin, or if they'd said, it would be okay if you just came out and hiked for a couple months and didn't finish the trail. Both of which are, reasonable questions or thoughts to have, but at the time it was just like, that's not an option. Like,
Yeah, that ain't happening.
It wasn't a question in my mind. It was like, I'm going to hike these 2,200 miles from Georgia to Maine, and I'm going to summit Katahdin. I've been planning on doing this since I had a camp counselor when I was 9 who told me stories about his through hike. And like, but it wasn't even that sort of like, I don't know, like hubris machoism, but just like the idea of not finishing what was like, it wasn't a possibility to me.
Right. In some way,
what
shape,
I was
or
going
form.
to do was finish the trail.
Yeah.
And that's what was going to happen. So you can get like totally fixated on, here's this goal I've set for myself, and
yeah,
damn it, I'm going to do it.
Right. Well, I guess I think the part that I'm curious about, and I wish I knew the formula of, there's all these things like happiness in somebody's life. If you only knew the formula for like, oh, I just got to plug in X, Y, and Z, and then boom, happiness. But for me, it's really like trying to find those certain things, those certain goals, those challenges, whatever they are, that just, they blow your hair back. They light that fire inside of you. They get your blood pumping, your nerves are a little rattled. You're like, holy smokes, I'm going to dedicate what I do. And maybe that is part of it, because even for the AT, I had to make sure that I saved a certain amount of money. So it meant like I had to do well in my job. I had to take extra stuff if I could, get extra tips, all this. I had to save money. I couldn't just go and, go drinking every night with everybody down in the islands or whatever. Same with the, 3 years leading up to sailing. I don't know. I think there's something pretty cool about it, and I do wish I could just turn it on and off, I suppose.
Well, I mean, that's part, right? It's almost not in your control, right? You get
It's
like,
definitely not.
bitten by whatever the
Yeah,
bug is to go
right?
do whatever the adventure is, and then that's all you
And
just
then you
start
do it.
fixating on.
Well, and interesting point. There have been a lot of times where people would ask, and they'd be like, "Well, what was the best day on the trip? Was it when you pulled in back to land?" And I was like, "That definitely was not the best day on the trip." And there were some aspects of it that were awesome. Making landfall, you got a lot of good things to look forward to. You see people, all that sort of stuff. But definitely
Food on land
not.
is pretty good.
Oh my god. I have this little video clip from one of the trips where I get back and I take the first slice of pizza. I literally start crying.
Town's got good food and hot showers.
Yeah.
And those are pretty nice.
And they feel that much better
Yeah.
when you abstain
Yeah.
or can't have them. I think that for me, and I've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast, but the level of joy that you can attain when you have to go through so much misery to get there is something I think everybody in their life has to sort of balance. You can't just say, I'm not going to eat chocolate for 75 years so that I'm going to then eat some chocolate and it's going to be the best. That doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, to take hiking, for example, you could go out and hike I think I actually was talking about this with Sam a little bit, but you can go out on a beautiful sunny day and go for a hike. And it's, woo, yeah, this is awesome. You can go then out on a hike and it's snowing, raining, lightning, and it's like that for 3 or 4 days, and then you get your sunny day. How much better does
Sunny
that
day
one
is
feel good?
pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the equation in a lot of these things. But again, yeah, I mean, you have to balance it because I don't know. When I went to do the trip around the Americas and possibly around Antarctica as well, the figure 8,
Right.
in 2020, there was part of me that was definitely trying to get to the South Atlantic, heading north after all the rest of the trip was already done, and feel how good I felt when I did it on the trip around the world. Because once you escape the Southern Ocean and then the temperature finally goes up into the 70s and the winds sort of steady back out and you've escaped the dangers, it's the greatest thing in the world. Like, I had 3 days of it and I'll never forget it. I can remember exactly what the clouds looked like. It was so amazing. But it took being not only in the Southern Ocean for 4.5 months, but also 2 months of preparing for that in the Atlantics. And then however many years it took to, save all the money and all the prep work it took to get the boat and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, you can go back and further and really dial in like how much work it took to get to that spot. But I don't know. It's this crazy thing and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah, the one thing that's really beautiful about backpacking is it's just so simple. It really is just throw your stuff in a bag, and it's not that much stuff,
Not that much.
and go
Can't be.
walk. And we both have pretty small, relatively simple boats, but they're way more complex
Yeah.
than a backpack.
This is true. This is true.
Right.
How much?
I've got-
Can I ask you just on a technical aspect? How much weight were you normally carrying on the AT?
On the AT, I think my base weight, so for the non-thru hiking gearheads on listening to this, base weight is the term that hikers use to refer to the weight they're carrying minus consumables. So excluding fuel, food, and water.
Right.
So the weight of your pack, tent, sleeping bag, headlamp, all that other stuff that
The
is
gear.
constant. I think that was about 14 pounds on the AT, and on the PCT, I had it just under 10, like 9.5 pounds maybe.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was
Holy
pretty light on
smokes.
the PCT.
Really
Yeah.
light. Jeez.
Yeah.
So was that so with food And as much as you want to just be able to carry like dehydrated stuff, it's just not happening. I mean, you got to have like peanut butter. You got to have like
Yeah, I mean, I just started making sandwiches in town and packing them out. I'd buy like a bag of 6 bagels, and
Oh,
I'd make
really?
yeah,
Bagels are great
I'd,
though.
I'd make
A lot of calories.
cheddar cheese and salami sandwiches in town,
Mhm.
shove them all back in the bag, and I'd have one for lunch every day. on the show, yeah.
Really?
If I could
Interesting.
find those like packets of mayo, because mayo is just like it's got
Oh, yeah.
so much fat in it, so
Yeah,
many good
yeah.
calories. I'd pack those as well and squirt some mayo on the bread. And
Yeah. Did you do Pop-Tarts?
on the AT, I ate a lot of
Lot of
Pop-Tarts,
Pop-Tarts.
and then
They're
I-
so easy.
I couldn't do Pop-Tarts anymore, so I stopped.
Yeah, they're like that guilty pleasure because they're so easy to eat in the mornings. So you can just roll out compared to oatmeal and
Yeah. A lot of my standard breakfast in the AT was 2 packages of Pop-Tarts, so like 4 individual Pop-Tart pastries.
Oh wow,
And
good for you.
and
man.
cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese, yeah.
Eat my cheddar cheese
You
and
can eat
Pop-Tarts,
cheese
and yeah.
24 hours a
Oh,
day on that thing.
And it keeps forever. Like
Oh
it does
my
not
God,
need to be
yeah.
refrigerated. Throw
You
some
can
hard
make-
cheddar cheese in the bottom of your pack. It's good for. I've had it out for 6-7 days in the bottom of a pack. It's fine.
God.
Gets a little bit oily and greasy, but it's fine.
Yeah. Oh God, holy cow, that's bringing me back. Absolutely bringing me back. All right, well, hey Dan, we're well past an hour, and I've taken up so much of your time with this. Like this is, I don't know, it's fun when I sit down like with friends, pretty much just sitting down and just having a conversation, but to have so many similar aspects as far as the sailing and the hiking and everything, and
Yeah, it's fun.
I feel like if we do get a chance, I may pull you aside for another just quick like 30-minute pod where I just want to grill you about the PCT, because I don't know if you noticed I got the book.
Yeah, I saw the book up there.
There's part of me, I always like to have contingency plans for my 1 year or 6 months ahead of me sort of plans.
Thinking
And
about
that's
the
one of them.
PCT.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's-
because May is just around the corner, and I've got a pack. I've got all the gear.
Yeah.
I just I need to just slice. Mostly for me, it's what do I do with this boat? Like I have to haul it out. I can't just like leave it on the dock here. That ain't happening.
No.
So I don't
Yeah,
know, but
boats are hard.
boats are a little hard.
Blessing and a
Luckily though,
curse.
they can be put on the hard, which
Yes.
then makes them pretty darn safe. So.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we'll sort of see. But thanks for coming on,
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
Super interesting. I definitely think we might have to do one more, but
I've still been getting a kick out of just running into you here.
I know it's so crazy. Small world,
Small world.
We meet up there at Night Marine, hanging with Murph, White Claws, down here, South Carolina.
It's so funny when I pulled in and the doc was like, yeah, there's some other people you'll meet here who are doing similar things to you single-handing. There's this guy Jerome who is single-handing, and he just got in the other day. It's like, is he on a West Sail 32?
Yep, that'd be him.
Pretty sure I know Jerome.
I thought for some reason I feel like we would have talked about this place a little bit when I was up in Maine. Maybe.
We may have.
We
but
must.
I mean,
must
when-
have mentioned
when
it. South Carolina. At
we were
least.
up in Maine. I didn't even have definite plans to, like, this trip was sort of happening at some point in the future, but I hadn't, I
Yeah.
didn't know when it was going to happen or anything like that. And so if you'd mentioned Ladies River Marina,
Ladies Island.
Island Marina, excuse me, I may just not have retained it.
Yeah, right.
Because like everybody loves to tell you about all the cool. Oh, when you get to wherever, you should go check out.
You do
you
get
realize,
flooded with
there are a
that.
lot of good places. Most places are good places.
I like to keep the secrets, I'll let a few people in on some of like the real epic secret spots, but I don't know. I know there's some people that want to shout to the world every time they find like a cool spot, and sometimes you want to be like, "Hey, let's keep that on the
Yeah.
down low."
Keep
All
that
right,
to ourselves.
Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend.
course.
This is great.